Next, I'm going to hand over to WorkSafe Victoria, and we've got a dual presentation from WorkSafe. So first, I'd like to introduce Michael Devlin, who's a lead inspector with WorkSafe Victoria and is a mentor for other inspectors in the sports, leisure and amusement industries. Believe it or not, Michael didn't plan to join WorkSafe. Following an incident that occurred at a workplace where he was working, he had an interaction with a WorkSafe inspector and was encouraged to apply as the team needed somebody with experience in public safety. Prior to joining WorkSafe, he worked as an OHS officer and senior risk assessor in private enterprises and local government. He has previous experiences working for a company who insured businesses in sports, leisure and hospitality sectors. So a very interesting insight into that insurance side of sport, leisure and hospitality. And Michael currently sits on Lifesaving Victoria's Platinum Pool Steering Committee, and we are grateful for his ongoing contributions to water safety and our industry to date. I'd also like to welcome Emma Barry, who is a WorkSafe inspector, is an inspector with WorkSafe Victoria. Prior to Emma's career at WorkSafe, she worked for many years in the aquatic and leisure industry, and I had the joy of calling her my manager at one point. And her primary work area whilst in the aquatics and leisure industry was safety and risk. She is highly skilled in technical aspects of safety, coupled with excellent leadership and change management expertise. Emma has succeeded in improved safety and risk performance across a range of industry-specific hazards in large and complex organisations. And Emma is looking to share some insights into her role of WorkSafe Victoria and practical tips for you all to fulfil your legal obligations under the health and safety law. So thank you both.
Okay, thanks everybody for having us today. We're going to talk a bit about incident notification. Apologies if people know this, but with the industry there's always a lot of changeover, so hopefully this will be... So from WorkSafe point of view, when we receive an incident from the industry, the first thing we expect you guys to do is phone up WorkSafe and speak to advisory. So employer notifies WorkSafe advisory of an incident. They then triage it. Most of the time now with WorkSafe advisory, because we've had so many new staff, they're just taking it. So it doesn't matter what the incident is, if you phone up WorkSafe, they will take it. Then what actually happens is it will then go to, from WorkSafe advisory, they will send it through to the relevant team. For people who don't know, WorkSafe is split up into different areas right across Victoria. I'm from the Narry A team, so my area is from down half of Dandenong South all the way down to Phillip Island, over to Bunyip, up to Emerald, and Emma is from your Essendon D, which is...
So we do a lot of sort of inner city, but all the way out to Lake Mountain. So sometimes, have to travel out to the snowfields. So yeah, pretty big areas that we cover.
So we do. So what happens is that WorkSafe advisory member will actually notify one of our group leaders. Our group leaders will then notify the person who actually notified WorkSafe. So whoever the contact is, could be the centre manager, depending, could be the OHS manager, could be anybody. So they will contact them and find out and get some more information on what actually happens. Sometimes we will go out, sometimes we won't go out. If we go out, we go out as an inspector. What normally happens is the group leader phones us up and says, look, can you go to this incident? If it's serious enough, the investigator might come out with us. Most of the time, the ones I've dealt with in this industry, and I have dealt with a few unfortunately, is I'm usually first there and then I'll make a decision whether an investigator is required to come. Who has duty? From our point of view, what we're looking at, because you are a public, you deal with the public a lot, you deal with schools, different groups, we're hoping, and we know in most instances, that the centre is actually notifying WorkSafe. It gets very confluent when a school might actually phone up and say, I had an incident with little Johnny. And then we then actually go to the school and then have to make inquiries and then have to go back to the centre. What we're looking at is the person who has management control of that workplace, which is mostly yourselves. We want you to actually notify, take control of it. We're just talking about minors, we're not talking about the serious fatality incidents. So little Johnny falls, injures themselves, it becomes an incident for yourselves, you fill out your relevant paperwork. If you believe it should be notified, you phone up WorkSafe. You take control of it. Don't let the school say, oh yeah, we'll do it, or what other group do it, because they might not do it. And if we go out there and find out that it hasn't been done, and sometimes it can happen because mum and dad will phone up WorkSafe and say, well, why don't you go out and investigate it or make inquiries? We're going to ask you a question, what happened? And then you're going to have to rely on a third party. Don't. Just go out and do it yourselves. Make that phone call, make it easy for everybody. And most of the time, we won't go out there. As I said, if it's a child who's been running, slipped over, banged their head, most of the time we won't go out there. But, as I said, employer or self-employed in some instances, which won't really affect yourselves, but employer who has management control of that workplace is bound by law to phone. Make it easy for yourselves, for the whole paperwork process, and for us, take control, just phone it through. Then WorkSafe will make a decision when it's triage, and then we follow those steps.
I just wanted to give a bit of information to you all around the types of inquiries an inspector might make when responding to an incident or a health and safety concern that's been raised at a workplace. So if an incident occurs at your facility, a WorkSafe inspector may attend the workplace, and they're going to be making inquiries or assessing whether you're meeting your obligations under the health and safety laws. And I feel like I'm really channeling Jared's information before, because I think the message is somewhat consistent. So the inspector's likely to make inquiries into the emergency response. Do you have qualified first aiders? But I would probably say that most of the inquiries are going to be about what actions were taken or what control measures were implemented before the incident actually occurred. So what were the prevention strategies that were implemented to prevent this particular incident from occurring? If we're talking about a drowning or a near drowning, an inspector will be making inquiries into things like your lifeguard deployment plan, the training and competency of your employees. They may also make some inquiries around how you're controlling risks associated with facility design. A WorkSafe inspector will also make an assessment to determine that your control measures that you've committed to are actually well implemented. I think Jared mentioned this before. It's no good having a lifeguard deployment plan that's gathering dust. It's really important that that's a living document and something that you probably discuss on a daily basis at your facility. If you are not controlling the risks to health and safety, an inspector may compel you to remedy that, so remedy any health and safety risks by issuing an improvement notice or a prohibition notice. So that's going to require you to undertake action to control risks to health and safety. And as Michael mentioned before, it is also possible that they may refer a matter or an incident for comprehensive investigation that can actually lead to prosecution. I just want to give, one key message from the presentation today from my point of view is if you're sitting here and you think, oh, I haven't actually looked at my lifeguard deployment program for a really long time, I'm not actually 100% sure that my employees have been appropriately inducted, or I'm not actually sure that all the qualifications are up to date, then I would encourage you and I would urge you to take action today and go and have a look at your risk control measures in place. Make it some time, potentially when you go back to your facility this afternoon or during the week, as we're talking about facility safety. Go and do a self-assessment, go and do an internal audit. You could simply just go and stand out on pool deck and conduct observations and ask yourself critically, are the control measures actually implemented that we have committed to? Because often, and we hear this a lot when we're responding to incidents, is people say to us, This is not usually how it happens around here. We don't usually do things this way, and that's usually when WorkSafe are there making inquiries in terms of how you're controlling risk. So, if you've got your diary, I reckon just, put aside some time. You may even like to have a chat with some of your colleagues that work in the industry and see if they even want to do a peer review or a peer audit where you can check in on each other's systems to ensure that they're effectively implemented. I just wanted to also just note, and I think Michael sort of mentioned this before, that in some circumstances, WorkSafe may attend a facility not because an incident has happened, and we actually get this quite a lot. Even when there's been an incident occurred outside a workplace, and maybe a parent or a bystander have actually observed that particular incident and they don't feel comfortable with the way that it's been handled by the facility, and we actually see this quite a lot. So what they do is they contact WorkSafe and facilitate a health and safety concern with advisory. So they want to make a complaint about your facility, which would trigger, I guess, the same response that Michael was discussing before around an inspector attending your workplace and making those inquiries. Potentially also a WorkSafe inspector may attend your workplace as part of a strategic program, or even if you've had a high number of injuries at your workplace.
Okay, finally, when we have to go out to a serious incident or say fatality, all the time there are usually one inspector, maybe two, and 2 to 3 investigators. Both have distinct roles to play in relation to a fatality. As Emma mentioned before, we're OHS, so we will deal with any breaches. So we'll have a look, we'll look at deployment plans, supervision, we'll look at CCTV footage. That is gold for us, because that actually shows us what's been happening, and we can have the power to seize days of it if we need to. So that is our role. We will go out there and we'll look at the OHS side of things. The investigator's role is to actually investigate what happened. So they will go through, they'll be looking for you for witnesses. So we're hoping that if there's any witnesses, you have witnesses put to the side, kept on site. They'll be, again, we'll be helping them, provide them with information in relation to deployment plans, etc., etc. So there are times when we will go to an incident, we'll have a look and there's no OHS breach, and we just walk off site. We don't need to be there. That's the inspector, where the investigator will still stay on site and conduct their business. Most of our investigators have come from the police force. They've moved across, so they're very experienced in conducting investigations. And for your information is that under recent coroner's request, we will be investigating every single fatality at a workplace. So whether it's work related or not, if it happens at a workplace, and most of them will have investigators there conducting their investigations. Finally, what I wanted to just quickly touch on is that recently, as in last week, the government has changed a couple of things in our Act, including notifications. I advise you to have a chat to your OHS team, risk team, or whoever, to get on the website and have a look at those changes, because they could be significant for yourself. Example is that once previously, if you had a leak from a boiler, which is a prescribed piece of plant, you didn't have to notify WorkSafe. Now you most likely will have to. So get your OHS team to have a look, and as I said, it changed on the 17th. The laws came in effect on the 17th of March, which is last week. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.